AC-1901, be advised, we're at 1295 junction. We've got a possible tornado.
Wind. Floods. Ice. It's no secret that Kentucky faces more than its share of natural disasters. While no one can control Mother Nature, Kentucky communities are not alone when it comes to bracing for the storm. With some planning and preparation, your community can be better prepared for almost any hazard that comes along. So when the storms do strike, the damage they leave behind isn't nearly as bad. That's what hazard mitigation is all about.
Hazard mitigation is basically a grant program that allows funding opportunities for communities to get mitigation measures.
Under these federal grant programs, approved local projects are funded in part by FEMA, and some receive additional funding from Kentucky Emergency Management, KYEM. The amount you, the local sub-applicant, will contribute toward your project ranges from 0 to 25% of its total cost. Hazard mitigation projects include all kinds of flood mitigation projects, such as the acquisition and demolition of flood-prone properties. Other possible projects include tornado-safe rooms, retrofitting, utility relocation, generators, and warning sirens. But the possibilities don't end there. Hazard mitigation is formally defined as sustained action that will reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property due to hazards. Numerous types of projects fit that description, and many of them are eligible for funding. One of several hazard mitigation projects underway in the Commonwealth is the Vaughn's Branch Drainage Project in Lexington. Consisting of 4 culverts and a detention basin, the project affects several flood-prone neighborhoods on the west side of the city.
This area that we're in, and the area on downstream, was developed somewhere in the mid to late 1960s before the National Flood Insurance Program came along. So everybody built down to creeks, and it was, oh, look at the nice creek in your side or backyard, but they forgot to tell you what happens when it rains a whole bunch and the water comes up.
To mitigate the flooding, Greg Lubeck explains, the old culverts are being replaced and the stream banks improved. The 7.2-acre detention basin adds more drainage land to green space that the city already owns further downstream. It's a massive project, one that has taken significant amounts of time and work. But it's also going to make a lot of difference for a lot of people.
The idea, if the water goes through faster, flood levels will go down, and there'll be some houses here we will actually remove from the 100-year floodplain.
Once the project is finished, this space, where a flood-condemned apartment complex once stood, will be a huge drainage basin, just off one of Lexington's busiest roads. The 4 old culverts will be replaced with wider, single-opening, natural bottom culverts that expedite the rapid flow of water. While the new culverts look good now, they'll look even better when they're draining potential floodwater. The total price for this project is $2.1 million, but because of their hazard mitigation grant, Lexington is only paying $273,000. The other 87% of the total project cost is paid by FEMA and the state. Over the next 30 years, it's estimated that because of this project, the area will avoid over $2.3 million in damages.
The Hazard Mitigation Grants Program, it's something that ultimately pays for itself.
In order to get funding for any type of project, the first thing you're required to do is have a mitigation plan. A mitigation plan identifies the hazardous risks to your community, then lists the risks you want to address and what steps you'll take to reduce or eliminate them. The first step in making your mitigation plan is to get organized and build a planning team. Who in your community deeply cares about making the environment safer from natural and man-made hazards, and who has the technical expertise to do so? Some examples could be emergency managers, leaders in the business or academic community, or elected officials. Don't forget about leaders from utilities or other nonprofits and the staff at your area development district or merged city-county government. The next step in making a plan is to assess risk. What kind of hazards are likely to strike your community? Is there a neighborhood that floods frequently? Has the number of tornadoes been on the rise? To figure this out, consider consulting the GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, professionals in your area. Look into your community's history of disaster events and talk to people like community planners, geologists, meteorologists, and local public works and road crews. Once you know the risks you're facing, your third step is to decide which risks get priority to be reduced or eliminated. You do this by considering your vulnerabilities to the different hazards. Be sure to take into consideration the vulnerability of critical facilities, like fire stations and hospitals. Once you've identified your priorities, the fourth step is to set goals and determine what actions and projects you can undertake to achieve them. For example, if your goal is to reduce flooding, one action may be to create a drainage basin. Writing out these goals and how you hope to accomplish them is how you create the mitigation strategy of a mitigation plan. Once you've written out your goals and actions, your plan needs to be approved by Kentucky Emergency Management and FEMA. Then it's time to put the plan into practice. Some actions your community can easily take, like clearing debris out of culverts. Other actions, like buying out homes in a flood-prone area and converting them to green space, are good candidates for joint projects between your community, the state, and FEMA. There are 5 major programs under which you can apply for project funding. One of those programs, HMGP, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, is only available after a presidentially declared disaster has occurred in Kentucky. HMGP can fund a wide range of projects, including all kinds of flood mitigation, construction projects, planning, and initiative projects like generators and warning sirens. The other 4 programs are funded on an annual cycle, so there's money available every year. Out of those 4 programs, PDM, Pre-Disaster Mitigation, covers the widest range of projects, including flood mitigation, construction projects, and planning. The next annual program is FMA, or Flood Mitigation Assistance. It covers a broad range of flood mitigation projects. RFC, Repetitive Flood Claims, is also an annual program designed especially for communities facing significant financial limitations. RFC funds can cover up to 100% of certain flood mitigation projects. The final annual program, SRL, Severe Repetitive Loss, is designed to fund flood mitigation projects that target properties with at least 4 NFIP claims of flood damage. You can speak to the hazard mitigation team at KYEM or at UK to help determine which program is best for your project. For all 5 programs, the application process is very similar. They all start with an LOI, Letter of Intent. The letter of intent contains a description of the problem you're facing and the project you're proposing to mitigate that problem. If your LOI describes an eligible project, next you'll be asked to fill out a DDT, a data documentation template, and a preliminary application. This is a record of all the damages that have happened at your project location over the years. In order to get state and federal approval, we need to show that your project's benefits, or the future damages it will help avoid, are at least equal in value to the financial cost of doing the project.
You can have property damage, contents damage, structural damage. If a road is closed due to a washover, that traffic has to be rerouted, and in disrupting the flow of traffic within a community has an economic impact. FEMA has formulas that are used to determine what those damage amounts are. The communities, though, need to document the occurrence.
There are a few projects that don't have to undergo benefit cost analysis, initiative projects like generators or warning sirens, but for most, BCA is required. If your project passes benefit cost analysis, then it's time to refine the application. The format of your application depends on whether you are applying for the HMGP program, which is done in a Word document, or one of the annual programs, done online in eGrants. The applications are detailed and usually require input from both yourself and an initial reviewer.
Rare that I don't see an application that needs at least 1 round of revisions. And since it's something that we look at all the time, we know some of the tricks and how some things need to sound, what the FEMA language is, that maybe people out in the communities don't know those tricks. So that's why we review it closely and then send it back with suggestions and revisions.
Once you and your initial reviewer are satisfied with your application, you will formally submit it to KYEM, where the application will be reviewed again before it is submitted to FEMA. While KYEM and FEMA are reviewing your application, they may be in touch with you to ask questions or request changes. Once FEMA has reached a decision whether or not to approve your application, they will notify KYEM, and KYEM will notify you. If FEMA does decide to fund your project, KYEM will assign you to a project manager. This project manager will work with you throughout the life of your project as your connection to KYEM and FEMA, and will help you make sure your project is carried out according to state and federal rules.
It takes a lot of work, but it's worth it. You do projects where you can prevent homes from flooding, people have drowned from drainage issues. It could potentially save lives.